Hi, I'm Carl Larson, and I've been directing live events for the last 20 years. The new Ronin 4D is the strangest camera I think I've ever seen in my career, but it may actually make a ton of sense for a live production looking to add a wireless cinema camera to their event. So hear me out. Love it or hate it, the NFL has been doing this for a while. They've been using a Sony mirrorless Alpha full-frame camera, stick it on a Ronin, and they're getting these beautiful cinematic end zone and sideline shots. And essentially, this camera is completely rogue. It's basically a live TV engineer's nightmare camera. Why is that? Well, the camera's not designed at all to be used in a live production. It's running off an internal battery, relies on autofocus, is built up with a third-party gimbal, has third-party wireless transmission, no internal NDs, no remote paint controls. There are so many points of weakness in a system like that. But they're making it work, and when they make it work, it looks beautiful in their live production. But what DJI just did with the announcement of the 4D takes all those individual pieces and the weaknesses that they have and packs them into one integrated system, eliminating several key points of weakness in the camera package. And on top of that, there's wireless transmission and wireless control built into that system. At least on paper, the wireless transmission system rivals top-end systems that cost nearly twice as much and only transmit quarter of the distance. It's like DJI introduced the best HD transmission system available and then just threw in a 4-axis gimbal and a full-frame camera on top for free. Before I get too deep in this video, let me say with clarity, at the time of this recording, I have not yet seen or used a Ronin 4D in person, nor am I sponsored in any way to promote this camera. But what I can tell you with confidence is this: if your church or corporate event or live production is looking to add a stabilized live cinema camera, I'd seriously consider the Ronin 4D as an option. It sounds crazy, but this could really open up some very interesting avenues for upping production value without using a traditionally priced or traditionally configured Steadicam setup. And with the included autofocus and tracking modes, it seems like this will dramatically cut down operator training and skill required to run such a moving camera, especially if you're working with a volunteer or non-professional crew. So what exactly are we looking at here? And why do I think it's actually better than the existing alternatives? Well, in some ways it's not, but neither is that live camera that Sony's using for the NFL. So what we're talking about is a 4-axis stabilized gimbal, full frame 8K 60 frames per second using a 16:9 mode, or full frame 6K 48 frames, depending on which camera head you buy. Either camera supports internal recording, 14 stops of dynamic range, 9 stops of internal NDs, all of which are remotely controllable and variable in one-stop increments, which means you can really get that shallow depth of field dialed in however you want it. On top of that, you've got full remote control over color temperature and tint, and as previously mentioned, there's a 1080p 60 wireless transmission system in it that's rated to go to 20,000 feet. That's a range of 3.78 miles. That sounds like a serious camera. But I'll tell you what's not a serious camera. For the longest time, I was a big fan of the DJI Osmo. I loved it. I actually traveled the world with it as a standby camera. I took it to Haiti, the Grand Canyon. It was compact, fast, high resolution, just a quick run and gun gimbal. And it was my answer years before GoPro came up with Hypersmooth, before it was ever a thing. Eventually I stopped using it because it had poor dynamic range, couldn't do meaningful slow motion, and basically fell apart as soon as you got in a low light situation. So like most shooters, I abandoned it, switched to a larger gimbal with a Sony mirrorless camera on it, just like the NFL is doing, but I never liked it quite as much. Anyway, with the Ronin 4D introduced now, I feel like DJI announced a fully grown-up package that I've always wanted, meeting my needs for a moving camera. It's like they introduced the Osmo Pro Pro. So let's talk through it piece by piece. First, which camera option is for you? The 6K performs better in low light, has higher frame rates in 16:9, and has a native ISO of 800 and 5000. The 8K camera offers higher resolution, maxes out at 60 frames per second in almost every format, and has a native ISO of 800 and 4000. I think the 6K is going to be a very popular option with a lower price. Longer record times, higher frame rates, and higher native dual ISO is going to be a hard sell for me to go up to that 8K camera. Next, let's talk weight and form factor. Of course, this camera looks weird. Everyone agrees about that. But the question is, does it make a pretty picture? With a weight of 4.7 kilograms, or roughly 10.3 pounds, it's not light, but it's certainly not too heavy, especially considering other cinema camera options. Compared to a full-size gimbal on top of a heavy camera, this is a very easy to use package. It weighs roughly the same as a standard Sony FS7, which I can shoot with for several hours, so that seems doable. If you were looking at a lighter option like a Komodo, you need to remember that in a live production, we need to add on a number of components to make it work so we can get a signal out of the camera, like transmitters, monitors, larger batteries, and all of those things factor into the weight and price of the camera package. So starting with the Komodo, 2.1 pounds, we add a 4-pound gimbal, a V-mount battery at 2.5 pounds, a 7-inch monitor at 1.5 pounds, wireless transmitter at 0.5 pound, and we're looking at roughly 8 to 10 pounds, the same payload as the DJI Ronin 4D. All of that without all of the remote control and NDs that are built into the system. Lenses. Initially, I thought the biggest weakness for the system was the lens options. The DJI D-mount lenses are not impressive. They're expensive and they max out at f2.8. But they're making a Sony E-mount adapter, and I think that's where some really great options are gonna emerge, especially if you're using their prime lenses. A few zooms are technically supported according to DJI's official list, but the options are limited due to the weight and size of the glass. If you need a zoom lens, especially one with a long ratio, this might not be the setup for you. But switching to E-mount also saves you a ton of money, and it gets you faster, higher quality lenses. The DJI kit of the 16, 24, 35, and 50 equals a whopping $4,700. And the E-mounts, on the other hand, all at f1.8, if you look at 20, 35, 50, and 85, total $2,300. And if you want the widest lens possible, that's again going to be a Sony E-mount lens, 14 millimeters for $1,600. Time and testing will tell for sure, but on paper, the E-mount seems like a no-brainer with this camera setup. Wireless transmission. One of the biggest barriers to getting a good moving live shot is not the ability to move the camera itself, but having a way of getting that signal into the control room reliably, and then getting that camera to match the rest of the cameras in the production. With the advertised 20,000 foot transmission distance and simultaneous SDI and HDMI outputs on the receiver, getting that signal into a live production should be a whole lot easier. Realistically, I don't believe the numbers. Let's say it's a good quarter of that, because you're never going to get 4 miles line of sight with the transmitter. But even so, 1 mile of range, that's the same as a $14,000 Teradek Bolt Max as advertised, and that's operating under perfect conditions. To be honest, I'd be happy with something that's rock solid within 1,000 feet. Regardless if it's really good as it's advertised, this is going to be a game changer. Remember, think of this as a $7,000 wireless transmitter and a free camera. It's kind of too bad you can't add your own input to this transmission system as a standalone system. Hopefully that's a future option. Autofocus and tracking. One of the beauties of a cinema camera is its ability to separate the subject from its background with depth of field. But maintaining focus on your subject while moving is also one of the most difficult aspects of the shot. And if you can't keep the object in focus, you might as well not use the shot at all. So the autofocus and assistive autofocus modes on this camera are a really big deal. You can put it in full auto, semi-automatic, or hand the focusing process off to a focus puller who's watching the signal from afar. Since all of the remote control is built into the wireless system, it doesn't matter where the focus puller is physically located. As long as they're within wireless range, they can pull up the interface and assist with the focus without any more add-ons on the camera end. Finally, let's talk price. Initially, this looks like a really expensive beast of a camera, but if we go back to the Komodo example from earlier and put our systems side by side, it becomes a really interesting and competitive price point. For the 6K 4D Ronin system, we're looking at $7,200 for the Ronin 4D. And since we want this in a live environment, we'll need the additional add-ons for the wireless package. The wireless transmitter is $400. The HiBrite monitor is $1,700. And the SDI HDMI expansion plate on the receiver is an additional $470. So far, we're at $9,770. For the Komodo, we're looking at $6,000 for the camera, $1,000 for the Ronin RS2 gimbal, $2,790 for a wireless transmitter and receiver, $1,400 for a HiBrite monitor, all of which totals to $11,190. From there, we still need to add in media, extended warranties, and more, but you get the point. Building a modular system may allow you to have more flexibility with the individual pieces, but DJI's fully integrated system actually saves you money if this is the sort of configuration you're building towards. So what's the takeaway with all this? Well, it's a weird camera with a lot of potential. That's what I think I can say. I can't wait to try it out and use it on a real production. I think of just about any live production looking for a wireless cinema or remote controllable package could really benefit from a setup, as long as they're not needing zoom or long telephoto lenses. I'm excited to check it out. And speaking of checking things out, if you're searching for in-depth content on how to improve your live video productions, I'd encourage you to check out our newly launched course, The Fundamentals of Live Production, which is available today at pavement.media. The course covers topics like video formats, frame rates, directing, camera operation, and more, all from a live video production perspective. And we think you're really gonna love the lifetime access to this expanding library of live production resources. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.